So we already know that Michael K. Williams is a gone to Knicks games, Knicks fan, it seems. Is there anyone else from The Wire, and this will kind of be our transition of sorts, who we would be surprised is a Knicks fan?
Oh, man. When I go to the Knicks games, it's literally like a Wire reunion. I promise you. The last time I went to the game, someone I saw that would probably surprise you all was Clay Davis. He was at the game. And I was just like, oh, you're a Knicks fan? Like, it's just, for some reason, the cast members of The Wire love the Knicks, right? Of course, y'all know Hassan Johnson. My guy, Weebay, played my dad on the show. He's at every game. Michael K, of course, is like the voice of the Knicks now, right? It's really cool to be there and see it's like an alumni of sorts, right? And it's cool to see that we all like love this team. And anytime we go, I'm sure you all know that Mike Breen is probably one of the biggest fans of The Wire ever. Mike Breen, the first time I met him, and I promise you this, he was like starstruck when he saw me. And I'm sitting there like, please, no, like I'm starstruck, like one of the greatest announcers of all time. And he, just to have people who care about the show in that way is always special.
For sure. Well, I want to tap into Andrew because...
bring Andrew up, man.
Andrew did something impressive. Andrew, you want to tell the people watching what you did?
I'll jump in. First of all, Jeremy, I'm a little disappointed that when he said Clay Davis, you didn't go,
Well, I didn't want to interrupt, but that's why. I was thinking. That would have been first thing in my mind, but
worthy interruption if you did. So, Julito, when we originally were looking for guests for While John is Away, we thought about getting you on so we could finally talk to you because we've seen The Wire and love the show, and it's one of the all-time greats, and we're about to talk about it. And so to prep, because I figured Jeremy would call me up for some of this, I decided I'd just put on season 4, refresh my memory with an episode or two. This was yesterday at about noon. And maybe 10 minutes before you logged on to join us on Zoom, I finished the season 4 finale and successfully watched all of season 4 in about 29 hours, which was a very good life decision, if I may say so myself. It remains my favorite season of the show as well, which is I'm not just saying that because you're here. If Dominic West was here, I would still probably say that season 4 is my favorite season. And maybe a controversial take, partly because he's not in it most of the season. Anyway, it remains incredible television, and I'm sure you get that a lot. What's the number one thing people say to you? Is it anything close to what I said? Or
first off, thank you. That means so much to me, man. 28 hours, you watch 13 episodes. You're mad.
It made sense,
I probably get like, hey, you finally cut that hair, huh? I get that probably. My hair became a character of its own for sure. I was, So, man, the Wire fans, just like Knicks fans, man, they're some of the smartest fans. I hate the word fans. They're smartest supporters ever. They know the show front to back. They know every character. They know every scene. They teach me things. It's always a pleasure when someone stops me and talks about The Wire for sure.
So do you remember the moment you kind of realized you were part of one of the more important television shows ever? I mean, was it on the set? Did it take you time to really reflect on it? Because this was before also social media. So for a lot of these shows today, they can see instant reactions, but pay-per-view, it's a little different. How did it go for you?
100%. No, it's interesting, man. I have on my podcast, it was the first time I had brought on all 4 of the guys, and we talked about our experience, all 4 of the Corner Boys. And we talked about how when we were on set, man, we had no idea. I was 15, Tristan was 16, the rest of the kids were, the rest of the guys were 14 and 13. We were kids, man. We had no idea what we were going through or what we were experiencing. It was like summer camp for us, man. We got to do something we love with friends. And now I continuously have the moments where it hits me and I'm like, oh, snap, this is wow, right? My latest experiences during quarantine, I wanted to do something to support the folks who were going through it, who needed a friend, who needed just people to be around because we all had to be in the house. So I decided, I'm going to do a Wire watch party where every day we're going to do it for 5 weeks. Every day we'll watch 2 episodes. And I'm going to put out a Zoom link, and whoever shows up, shows up. And it was probably one of the best experiences of my life.
How many people did you get in?
Every day would be 200 people at minimum. Wow. Every single day. And I started to bring on I brought on probably every actor from the show. There was even a time where I brought on the hair and makeup team.
Jeremy, where were we?
I don't know.
Every time I tell people this, they're like, where was I, right? And then season 4, when we got to season 4, it was the first time since we wrapped the show, since the premiere of the show, that all 4 of the boys got together. We've never been in a room together since then. All 4 of us. And it was the first time we got together. And that day it was 2,000 people, of course. And it just hit me every day how I do it. We'd have like a quick talk. We'd watch the 2 episodes, and then we have like a kind of a talk back. And just to hear people, how much they care about the show, how much the show means to them, to hear like their just analysis of the show. It just there was moments where it hit me, and I was just like, wow. Like, you don't care about shows like that, right? There's only maybe 2 handful of shows ever that you'll have people 15 years later talking about it. And
yeah. And like, to that point, like, obviously the word important, I hesitate to use it often, especially when analyzing sports in general, because like, how important can sports be? And then art is the same thing. But it's like pretty obvious that The Wire is an important show, and the things that come after it are because of the Wire and the things it inspired. You mentioned that this experience, I guess, with the watch parties, was that like the first time it hit you that you were on one of the more important shows, or did it hit you earlier in life? Yeah,
there was a moment. So this woman walked up to me. She couldn't speak English, and she's just like, she's just like super in shock, and I thought she needed help or something was going on, and she brought like over a friend to translate for her, and she told me that like in her country, where she was here in New York visiting, and in her country, they would watch the show and they couldn't have HBO. HBO was illegal in her country, actually. So they had, they would send the Wire DVDs, the bootleg version, through the cities to watch it, and how much it like meant to her, how much it saved her life, because it taught her so much, and it allowed her to have empathy for people, for especially my season for kids. And in that moment, it just hit me like, you can do things at times that you don't understand the impact, the ripple effect it will have. And I've had so many moments like that, man. So many people. I mean, when David Simon sat down with Obama and talked about how it's his favorite, he let him interview him, right? Because it's his favorite show. And, our president was able to, talk about that, and him, saying Omar lines, right? Like how important that is. And, The Wire for me, it's not a TV show, man. It's Shakespeare. You know what I mean? It's literature. It's necessary. And I think that's what it always hits me here and there, because it was deeper than just like, they were watching a cop show. It was more than that. And I think people have, it's hit them the same.
Do you feel that the show's legacy kind of has only grown since streaming began? I mean, it must, right? Would you say that a lot of people more so now are hitting you up maybe before or during the pandemic than before?
Yeah, I actually saw an article where they said The Wire kind of its viewership revamped during quarantine, because now everybody had the time to go back and binge it again and watch. And man, I think, like you said earlier, we weren't out during the social media era, so I didn't really get to see people's natural reaction. But now that where people are watching again, and I did the Wire watch party, and I was kind of able to see it live and direct. It's just remarkable. Like I said, you don't see 15 years later people still talking about a show probably every day. 15 years later, right? Like, you just don't see this stuff, man.
Yeah, Jeremy, I have a question, not to like go off course of not interviewing Julito anymore, but Jeremy, how old were you when you first saw the show?
It was last year. It was during the pandemic.
Oh, it was during the pandemic. Okay.
No, so it was the sort of thing where, like before it, I was like, I want to watch this show. But like at first, it was like The Sopranos too and other shows where it's like, it seems so daunting and you just dive into it and then you can't stop. And before you know it, you're absolutely hooked into it. And I left watching The Wire feeling like this is probably the best TV show I've ever seen.
Bingo.
And just like there, to kind of tie it to the relevancy of what was going on, I was admittedly watching it during a time where with Black Lives Matter and George Floyd and it kind of coming at the forefront, and a lot of it, felt it resonated.
Yeah.
And look, I'm not a person of color clearly, but it was a sort of thing where I could recognize like this really fits in with everything, and it shows that nothing or very little has seemed to change. I mean, with everything with Amsterdam as well, and just all of it, just how it tied in. It felt like it was the same exact time, and yet we had advanced, and we really didn't. So
what do you say? Nothing changes, only the players, or something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. The game stays the same, man, and it's unfortunate, right? Especially my season is so heartbreaking because there's so many Namond Brices that are like going through the system as we speak, and there's so many, systems that are in place that just are not supportive for a Namond to succeed. And thank God we got bunnies, right? John's gonna listen back to this like, what are they talking about?
Yeah, seriously. So like, to your point though, there are a lot of Namond Brices, but my bigger takeaway is, and the reason first of all, the reason I asked Jeremy is because I think you need to have some type of a critical mind in order to understand why this show matters. Because as much as McNulty or Bunk or Omar or Stringer and Avon or even like Namond or anybody else that is a main character in a season, like the main character in The Wire is the city of Baltimore. Mm-hmm. And they picked that area to focus on 5 different elements that fuck up an entire system. And while there are Namonds that are going through it and have these personality disorders that are never diagnosed because the city never supports the schools the way they need to, there are also a lot of Randys. There are also a lot of Michaels. There are also a lot of Duquans. And it's heartbreaking. Like the throwaway lines in this show of when, I forget his name, the trainer that was Cuddy. So Cuddy, when he's scooping up the kids and it's like, come on, you got to go to school. And they're like, no, he already got his day this month. And like Baltimore has this law that kids just have to go to school for one day of the month to get credit for going to school that month. And like, what universe is that real? And it really, like, season 4 hits home that as much as like there's violence or whatever going on the streets, then the docks in season 2, we see how this affects white people too. Then in politics, that's the focus of season 3, and you're thinking, all right, well, the system's screwed up. And then season 4 hits home. Oh no, it starts at the schools. It's literally a detention in school to then pathway to then ending up with no other solutions but the street. And I mean, it just, seeing it over the last 24 hours obviously hit it home even harder. But like the legacy of this show, I guess I ask you now, as a part of that legacy, what do you feel the legacy of the show is?
I think if you're able to watch the show and you feel empathy or you feel that something needs to be done, I think we've done our job, right? But then when you feel that, I charge you to go and do something, right? Because I think the reason I don't know if most folks know that The Wire got canceled basically every season. Really? Yeah. Oh. Every season they had to fight for another season. That's why in between season 3 and 4, I mean, you guys probably won't know. I'm not sure if you watched it live, but it took, I believe, 1.5 years in between.
Oh, wow. No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, because it was after season 3, it was basically done. And David Simon, he like he fought hard for season 4, of course, because he knew what he was going to do. And season 1 through 3, it's like a setup for you to truly understand that it starts with the children and what the system is doing to our children. It is horrible, and I'm going to put it in your face and show you. Right, I'm going to introduce you to these 4 kids, and you're going to see them throwing piss balloons at each other and having fun and being friends the first episode. And I'm going to break your heart because you need to see what the system is doing to these children. And I think if you watch that and you look back and you say, I learned something from The Wire about this system and how shitty it is, I think that the legacy is going to be that it's necessary for change. Change it has to occur. There's no way that this system is going to continue to destroy our youth, which in turn destroys our world, right? Because the children are the future. But I think David Simon is just a genius at what he does and how he was able to tell the story of a city, of a system, and of people, and to humanize people like Bubbles. Right?
Yeah.
Everyone wanted Bubbles to win. You know what I mean? If you didn't, something is internally wrong, right? You just wanted, like, you're not, spoiler alert, but you know, when he walked up those steps, right? Like, if that didn't make you feel like you won, something's up, man. And for him to be able to do that in such an elegant way, and you know, I was watching it with my boy Sean. I envy him because he's never saw the show. So
so you get to see it through his eyes.
Watching it for the first time. And we got to the chess scene in season 1 where he's basically showing you the game, right? Like on a chessboard while he's trying to teach, while they're playing chess. The whole scene, right? They're playing chess. They're playing checkers on a chessboard, right? And he's like, nah, man, chess is a better game. And he teaches them chess and how important that is to see, right? Like the king always stays the king, right? And unless you're a smart ass pawn, right? Like just all the way he used words and the way these actors portray these characters. I just think outside of the super deep part of the legacy, you're able to see just beautiful television and beautiful writing. And if you look at it, almost every actor is still working to this day of an ensemble cast of like 30 plus. And where do you see that on any other show? You just don't see almost every single actor still out here working, and it's beautiful.
Well, I don't know how Jeremy experienced it when you watched it last year, but so I watched it, I think 3 years ago. But the point is, like after college, like after I had learned how to critically think, that's when I had watched The Wire. And like you mentioned, humanizing characters, like the way my heart broke, already knowing what was going to happen to Bodhi. And then it happens to him in the last episode. Let me
give y'all a quick story about that day. So that day when they shot that scene, all the cast members came to the set that day to support him. And literally, so I don't know if everyone knows, we shot The Wire in the middle of every hood we was talking about.
Oh, wow.
And
I knew it was on set in Baltimore. I didn't realize it was that specific.
And so there will be drug dealers selling their drugs, and they'd have to pause so we could shoot. And then when we say cut, they'd go do their thing, and then security had to say, all right, we're about to start, and they come back and we start shooting again. Right? It was that real. But that specific day, where outside there were hundreds of people watching this. Like people pulled up lawn chairs to watch this. And I'm not talking about the actors. I'm talking about the neighborhood. They all came out, and it was. Man, shout out to my brother JD Williams, such an amazing guy, amazing friend, and he just watching Bodhi. That's a tough one. That's a tough one.
Dang, you were on the show and you're already getting you're reacting to it away.
Wait, I don't know if you both know. Did you realize in that scene what occurs?
Which scene? The one that spoiler alert. The one we've
already had.
That's true.
The one where Bodhi gets killed. Did you see how he got killed though?
He got killed by the way that Snoop and Chris taught the guy that actually. Oh, so what happened?
That and the way that he got killed like the pawns on the chessboard.
Oh,
when the guy killed him. He walked up and then he turned left. Like, I don't know chess that well, but I believe.
Would that be a rook, Jeremy? Or is that a knight?
Well, if he's
If he's making the left,
the bishop would go left.
Yes.
Or right.
So the kid who kills him, he walks front and then he goes in the direction of.
But that's. Oh, then that's a pawn. Yeah, because the pawn can only go straight, but then when it takes its piece, it goes diagonal.
And while Bodhi's shooting back, he can only shoot forward. He never turns around like a pawn. Once you go forward, you can't go. This show is crazy.
Bro.
That's so next level. I can't.
Next level writing.
I kid you not. I just saw this an hour ago, and you just made it.
Writing
just blew my mind. I don't even know what the next question is.
Well, I'll just say, like the one thing that I always love about writers is how they're able to start something and then tie it all together so it feels like the whole story comes full circle.
Yeah.
And like, so you telling me that it's like that completely makes me rethink so much of what we've seen and just reevaluate. That's awesome.
Julito, have you seen Game of Thrones?
I did. I'm going to act like I didn't watch the last season, but I did.
Watch the last season. Same. Okay. So what was it like watching Carcetti be Littlefinger for 7 seasons?
Oh, it was cool. It's so interesting. So my season, I was when Carcetti was kind of one of the leads as well, and I didn't really get to know him that well. He was a very, how can I put it? He wasn't as boisterous as most of us, and he was very to himself, and so
he was Littlefinger is what you're saying,
right? He was very much like Littlefinger.
He was actually preparing for the role ahead of time.
Yes,
he's a big method actor.
Exactly. But yeah, it was extremely weird watching Carcetti like set up everybody in Game of Thrones, and yeah, I love Game of Thrones. I'm a huge Game of Thrones fan. I just, like I said, I'm gonna act like season 8 didn't happen.
What season are you talking? What are you talking about? Khaleesi comes to Westeros, and the show ended.
That's it.
I thought,
the show's over.
Yeah.
I don't even want to. I can go into some really strong takes I have about that last season. But
we don't want to get you in trouble because we'd like to see you in a spinoff. Yeah,
something on HBO. So.
There you go.
Exactly. Yeah,
there you go.
I'm curious though. Did you, in terms of prepping for the role, were you able to interact with a lot of these people in Baltimore who were on the street, or did the cast or the crew rather, they kind of keep you more separate? Like in terms of training, were you looking into more of a like the Baltimorean accent? What was the whole process like in terms of preparing for it and being Namond Brice?
Yeah, it was actually a really swift process in a sense. I'm going to tell you this, and I've said it many a times, and the rest of the boys will attest to it. The Namond, Michael, Dookie, and Randy wouldn't be what you all seen if it wasn't for Robert Chu, who played Prop Joe. So what occurred was in real life, Robert Chu was he was the instructor in like one of the biggest acting schools in Baltimore at the time. God rest his soul. He's moved on, but David said, I'm going to put these kids with Robert, and Robert's going to teach them like how to embody characters, how to become kids from Baltimore. And we'd be with Robert, just working with him every day. He'd be on set with us every day, even when he wasn't working. He really was the guy who brought these characters to life for us. And I owe him everything, right? Because, I think when people praise the kids, you have to praise Robert Chu as well. And yeah, we didn't get to spend a lot of time with the kids prior to getting the show, starting the show. But of course, we shot those scenes, especially those school scenes. We shot those with real Baltimore kids. Like all those extras were real Baltimore kids, and they acted like real inner city Namonds and Michael, right? Like it was real.
Even the girl that gets cut up, like was she an actor or a Baltimore kid?
Yeah. So the kids who had lines, for the most part, they probably came from Robert Chu's school.
Okay.
So they were kids who were acting, but even then they were still kids, right? And they were still like inner city kids, and it was funny, man. It was who I feel bad for, Presbo. Presbo would get it, man. We would really treat him like Presbo in real life.
I swear to God, just Namond walks up to him, fuck you. Just like
people, it wasn't that mean, but like people, like he really had to sit in those classrooms in those early and like deal with 30, 40 kids all day. And, you know, he Jim True for us. He did an amazing job. But yeah, we really did our best to truly learn the characters. And I think the script and the writing and the work did it for us. You know, I also thank Ed Burns, one of the writers and producers, who he sat with us for every day. He'd be right there, right next to David on set. But David wasn't very communicative or boisterous, or you wouldn't. David can scare you sometimes. Okay, David Simon can be very scary sometimes. Okay, so you're not gonna just walk up to David and start talking to David Simon. But Ed was a lot more calm and more chill, and he's the guy who also was a very pivotal part of these kids coming to life for sure.
So I've got to follow up to that, but before I say it, I just want to say one of the moments I think that really breaks my heart as well. I mean, we've like had spoilers littered everywhere throughout this, but
if you haven't
right by this point,
you can literally do it in an entire day. I promise you.
Exactly. But you know, like there's a moment where Duquan, I mean, he's on the computer a lot, and then there's one moment where you see what's on the computer screen, but you actually have to like rewind and pause it because it goes by so quickly. And when you're watching HBO Max, it takes like an hour because the app is just so bad. And you just see on the screen about how it's like Mr. Presbo's class and what he's designed. And then you see what kind of becomes of his life. And it just like, it tore me up to think, you know, you're in this situation where this kid is just excelling so many ways and the system just fails him and he can't cope. And it's just heartbreaking.
The ripple effect of the system failing people was tremendous, right? You know, Dookie, of course, right? And then you even look at Randy and how heartbreaking that is because he was asking for help. See, it was a little different for Dookie because Dookie didn't know he can ask for help, right? But Randy was actually asking to help me without saying those words, but he was asking. And they literally ignored him, right? So you got one instance where a kid who he doesn't even know it's possible for adults to support him until he meets Presbo. Then you have another kid who's been through the system for years and he knows what group homes is. He knows what snitching is. He knows. And he literally just does things to try to survive. And he's asking for you to support him and no one's listening because they'd rather care about a tennis ball with the camera inside of it, right? That's what occurs. And it's heartbreaking. Yeah. When I watched, because I don't really watch the show too often. I've watched it in its entirety maybe 3 times in my life. And when I watched it over the